The book of Ecclesiastes is one of the most profound, honest, and surprisingly modern writings in the entire Bible. Written by the preacher, traditionally understood to be Solomon, it describes life under the sun with rare transparency, exposing the human search for purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. Throughout the book, he dismantles the illusions that so often seduce the heart: wealth, pleasure, achievements, human wisdom, hard work, and recognition. When these things become the foundation of our existence, they reveal their empty, temporary, and fragile nature. Ecclesiastes is not a pessimistic book. It is a realistic one. It invites us to look at life with spiritual maturity, reminding us that everything in this world is vapor, brief, unstable, and incapable of sustaining the soul. Yet behind all this honesty lies a powerful message of hope. Despite human vanity, God remains sovereign, eternal, and faithful. The preacher takes us to the central point of all existence: to live for God, to fear the Lord, and to keep His commandments. Only when we understand that true fulfillment is not found under the sun, but above the sun, do we discover what truly matters. Before we continue, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you support this work and help this message reach people who need hope today. Stay with me until the end, because the 16 lessons you're about to hear may completely change the way you see life. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Everything is vanity without God. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. Ecclesiastes 1:2. Ecclesiastes opens with a hard but liberating truth. Everything in this world, when separated from God, ultimately loses its meaning. The word vanity here refers to emptiness, vapor, something that fades and cannot endure. The preacher shows that earthly pursuits such as wealth, power, pleasure, and recognition are far too fragile to sustain the weight of the human soul. When we place our hope in things that pass away, disappointment becomes inevitable, because none of them can truly satisfy the heart. This perspective is not pessimistic, but spiritually realistic. It urges us to reposition our priorities and recognize that only God can give lasting meaning to what we do. The lesson calls us to examine where we have been seeking value and purpose. When God is at the center, even simple tasks gain eternal significance. Without Him, even the greatest achievements turn into wind. True purpose is born when we live for the glory of God. Lesson 2. There is nothing new under the sun. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun, the sun. Ecclesiastes 1:9. This verse highlights the natural repetition woven into human life. Even as technology advances and cultures change, the core of the human experience remains the same. Emotions, struggles, joys, and sorrows follow patterns that have existed since ancient times. The expression "under the sun" refers to a life viewed only from an earthly perspective, without eternity in sight. When our vision is limited to what happens under the sun, everything eventually feels repetitive, predictable, and even tiring. But the author's intention is not to create discouragement, it is to provoke reflection. If we want something truly new, we must look beyond the sun, toward God Himself. In him we find renewed life, real hope, transformation, and a future that does not fade. What is new is not found in the world, but in the heart, made new by God. This lesson teaches us not to place our hope in external novelties, but in the Lord, who makes all things new within us. Lesson 3. Human wisdom has limits. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. Ecclesiastes 1:18. The preacher does not despise wisdom, he acknowledges its value. However, he also exposes a profound truth. Human knowledge, no matter how extensive, cannot answer the deepest questions of eternity. The more we understand the world, its beauty, complexity, and brokenness, the more we recognize our inability to control the outcomes of life. Wisdom reveals order, but it also exposes chaos. It shows purpose, but it also uncovers pain. For this reason, knowledge can lead to grief, not because wisdom is harmful, but because it exposes the reality of human limitation and the effects of a fallen world. This lesson does not instruct us to abandon learning, but to place wisdom in its proper place. We should pursue knowledge, but with humility and dependence on God. True wisdom does not produce despair, it produces reverence. When we acknowledge that the Lord is the source of all understanding, we find balance, clarity, and rest. Human wisdom has boundaries. Divine wisdom is perfect. Lesson 4. There is a time for everything. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Ecclesiastes 3:1. This is one of the most well-known truths in Ecclesiastes and a foundation for spiritual maturity. Not everything depends on our will. Much depends on God's appointed timing. Life is made of seasons, joy and sorrow, loss and gain, planting and harvesting, embracing and letting go. Accepting this brings peace to the heart. Anxiety often arises when we try to rush what God is building or cling to what He is removing. This lesson calls us to discern the seasons of life. There are moments to act and moments to wait, moments to speak and moments to remain silent, moments to hold on and moments to release. When we understand that God governs every stage of our journey, we learn to trust His rhythm. Everything has a purpose, even when we do not understand it. God's timing is perfect and always produces growth. Lesson 5. God has placed eternity in the human heart. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also he hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. Ecclesiastes 3:11. Here we encounter a profound mystery. God placed within every human being a sense of eternity, a longing for something beyond the material world. This is why nothing purely earthly is ever enough to satisfy us. There is a spiritual hunger in us that points directly to our Creator. At the same time, God limits our full understanding of His plans. We see only pieces, never the complete picture. This tension produces both humility and hope. Life, with all its beauty and pain, makes sense only when we recognize that something greater is unfolding, guided by an eternal God. This lesson invites us to rest, even when we do not understand everything, trusting that God sees the beginning, the middle, and the end. He makes everything beautiful in its proper time. We are called to trust, worship, and follow Him, even without having all the answers. Lesson 6. death levels. Everyone all go unto one place. All are of the dust, and all turn to dust again. Ecclesiastes 3:20. This verse confronts human pride by reminding us that all people, without exception, share the same physical origin and the same physical end. Death is the great equalizer of humanity. It ignores titles, accomplishments, wealth, and reputation. Its purpose here is not to inspire fear, but to bring the heart back to a place of wisdom that the busyness of life often obscures. When the preacher says that all return to dust, he highlights the fragility of our existence and our need to live with spiritual sobriety. The awareness of death does not diminish life's value, it deepens it. It gives weight to our choices, our words, and our relationships. Knowing that we are dust leads us to depend on God rather than on our achievements. Life gains true meaning when we realize that it does not end in the dust, but finds its eternal purpose in relationship with the Creator. Lesson 7. Empty ambition is destructive. Again I considered all travail and every right work, that for this a man is envied of his neighbor. This is also vanity and vexation of spirit. Ecclesiastes 4:4. This verse exposes a dangerous and often hidden motivation, working solely to surpass others. When the purpose of our labor is to feed envy or to compete out of pride, the heart becomes corrupted. Ambition without divine purpose produces exhaustion, frustration, and rivalry. The lesson is not to reject work, but to examine the motives behind it. A believer does not work to impress people. He works to glorify God. When our identity is secure in the Lord, we no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Comparison steals our joy and distracts us from our calling. The preacher invites us to live with contentment, gratitude, and purpose. Work is good. Working for vanity is empty. We are called to pursue excellence out of love for God and service to others. Lesson 8. Rest is necessary. Better is an handful with quietness than both the hands full with travail and vexation of spirit. Ecclesiastes 4:6. This verse challenges the human belief that value is measured by quantity, achievement, and constant productivity. The preacher teaches that having less with peace is better than living overwhelmed and chasing a life with both hands full. The vexation of spirit describes the inner turmoil of someone who never slows down, never celebrates, never breathes, someone always running toward the next goal. Work becomes oppressive when it loses balance and purpose. God does not condemn effort. He warns against the imbalance that turns a person into a slave of their own ambitions. Rest is not an interruption to life, it is an essential part of it. It protects us from emotional, spiritual, and relational exhaustion. True wisdom is recognizing that not everything must be carried, and that peace is more valuable than accumulation. Lesson 9. Honor God with sincere vows. When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it, for he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Ecclesiastes 5:4. This verse invites us to reflect on the weight of the words we speak before God. In moments of emotion, it is easy to say more than the heart is prepared to fulfill. Yet to God, words are not empty sounds that fade into the air. They reveal intentions, commitments, and the true condition of the heart. The preacher calls it foolishness to speak without thinking, to promise without considering, or to forget what was vowed before the Lord. A vow is not a negotiation. It is a declaration of surrender that requires alignment between what we say and how we live. When someone makes a promise to God and delays or ignores its fulfillment, it reveals a lack of reverence and spiritual seriousness. Honoring a vow does not impress God. It reflects respect for His holiness and integrity in His presence. Our words before God must always be thoughtful, responsible, and true. Lesson 10. Patience, the pathway to true wisdom. Better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Ecclesiastes 7:8. This verse teaches that the true value of something is not found in its exciting beginning, but in the ability to remain faithful until the end. Beginnings are often filled with energy, emotion, and expectation. However, the end reveals what truly shaped the character along the journey. The preacher contrasts patience with pride to show that the proud seek quick results, recognition, and control, while the patient accept process, limits, and dependence on God. Patience is not passivity, it is spiritual maturity that recognizes purpose in waiting and wisdom in God's timing. Pride rushes, demands, and frustrates easily because it resists being shaped. But the end crafted by God is far more valuable than an impulsive beginning. A patient heart is one that yields, trusts, and perseveres, producing fruit that pride could never produce. Lesson 11. The wise discern the right time. A wise man's heart discerneth both time and judgment. Ecclesiastes 8:5. Biblical wisdom goes beyond knowledge. It involves spiritual sensitivity and the ability to recognize the right moment to act. The preacher teaches that a wise person does not merely know what to do, they understand when and how to do it. This kind of discernment protects us from impulsive decisions, unnecessary conflicts, and actions taken in the wrong season. The foolish act out of impulse, the wise act with reflection and purpose. Life requires a balance between action and waiting, and true wisdom helps us distinguish between the two. Knowing the right time is a divine gift that shields us from painful paths and avoidable consequences. This verse reminds us that a decision taken outside its proper time can be just as harmful as a wrong decision. Time discernment is one of the clearest marks of genuine spiritual maturity. Lesson 12. Life is unpredictable. All things come alike to all. There is one event to the righteous and to the wicked, to the good and to the clean and to the unclean. To him that sacrificeth, and to him that sacrificeth not. As is the good, so is the sinner, and he that sweareth, as he that feareth an oath. Ecclesiastes 9:2. This verse reveals the raw landscape of life under the sun. Reality does not bend to human expectations or distribute circumstances according to merit. The righteous and the wicked walk the same roads, feel the same rain, and face the same surprises. This uncomfortable truth dismantles the illusion that life operates as a predictable system. Solomon is not writing to discourage us, but to awaken us from the false belief that we can control every outcome. He calls us to understand that life is deeper than formulas and more complex than what people deserve. When we accept that unexpected events reach everyone, we learn to live with humility, gratitude, and spiritual vigilance. Life's unpredictability does not mean the absence of God. Rather, it highlights that only He remains steady when everything else is unstable. His sovereignty is our anchor in a world full of uncertainties. Lesson 13. The fool multiplies words. A fool also is full of words. A man cannot tell what shall be, and what shall be after him, who can tell him? Ecclesiastes 10:14. The preacher notes that the foolish person talks excessively, promises recklessly, and makes confident assumptions about things he does not understand. He presents himself as an expert on everything, yet he does not even know what tomorrow will bring. This multiplication of words reveals arrogance, impulsiveness, and a lack of discernment. The wise, by contrast, speak with caution, aware of their limitations and their dependence on God. This passage shows that the fool's verbosity exposes him, while the wise person's restraint protects him. Wisdom is connected to humility and to the honest acknowledgement of how little we truly know in the face of life's mysteries. Too many words often lead to confusion. Wise words bring clarity, life, and direction. The lesson is simple, yet powerful. Speak less, listen more, and let your words carry weight and purpose. Lesson 14. True life exists above the sun. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. Ecclesiastes 12:7. In this verse, the preacher reminds us of our dual nature, a body formed from dust and a spirit that comes directly from God. Death brings an end to our earthly existence, but it does not end the journey of the spirit. The return to dust reveals the fragility of physical life, while the return to God declares the eternal destiny of the soul. This perspective dismantles illusions of self-sufficiency and calls us to live beyond the limits of what is under the sun. Nothing material follows us into eternity. Only our relationship with God endures. Therefore, the meaning of life is not found in accumulation, but in preparation for our final meeting with the Creator. When we understand that we were made for more than the earthly and the temporary, we live with greater lightness, purpose, and reverence. True life does not end on earth. It continues before God, the one from whom we came and to whom we will ultimately return. Lesson 15. Fearing God is what truly matters. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Ecclesiastes 12:13. After exploring all the complexities of life, vanity, labor, injustice, pleasure, wisdom, and human limitations, the preacher ends his book with a simple and decisive conclusion. The purpose of existence is to fear God and keep His commandments. Solomon, who experienced wealth, power, knowledge, and pleasure, declares that none of these things can sustain the soul or provide lasting direction. To fear God here does not mean terror, but profound reverence, recognizing His sovereignty, bowing to His authority, and living in humble submission to Him. Keeping His commandments is the practical expression of that reverence. Scripture describes this as the whole duty of man, meaning there is no higher calling, deeper purpose, or greater identity than to walk in covenant with God. Everything else in life is secondary. This conclusion invites us to place the Creator at the center, understanding that true wisdom begins when life bows before Him. When God is feared, trusted, and obeyed, the soul finds its rightful foundation. Lesson 16. God will judge every work. For God shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. Ecclesiastes 12:14. The preacher closes his book with a powerful and sobering truth. Every aspect of human life, whether visible or hidden, will one day be examined by God. Nothing escapes his sight. Public actions, hidden thoughts, unspoken words, and secret intentions are all laid open before him. This truth was not written to produce paralyzing fear, but to awaken spiritual responsibility. Divine judgment reveals that life carries eternal meaning and that our choices matter far beyond the present moment. Knowing that God judges perfectly brings comfort to those who suffer injustice, because evil will not remain unpunished before the Lord. At the same time, it warns those who live carelessly in sin, reminding us that grace does not cancel God's holiness. This verse holds together both hope and reverence. Hope, because God is just. Reverence, because He is holy. Living with this awareness gives depth to our present walk and prepares our hearts for eternity. It reminds us that all of life is lived before the eyes of the one who sees all, weighs all, and judges in truth. The book of Ecclesiastes is an invitation to spiritual and emotional maturity. It dismantles human illusions, exposes the fragility of earthly life, and points us to the only true source of meaning, God Himself. Throughout its reflections, the preacher shows that life under the sun is limited, repetitive, and empty when disconnected from the Creator. But when we live above the sun, with our eyes fixed on eternity, everything gains a new perspective. Work, relationships, pain, joy, losses, and achievements all begin to carry a higher purpose. Ecclesiastes calls us to live with wisdom, to fear God, to discern the right time, to seek contentment, to cultivate meaningful relationships, and to invest in works that hold eternal value. The final message is unmistakable. Everything we do will one day be brought before God. For this reason, we must live with integrity, humility, and reverence. True life is not found in the endless pursuit of pleasure or accomplishments, but in a deep and daily walk with our Creator. He is the one who gives meaning to our days, comfort in our pain, and direction for every choice we make. May each lesson from this book inspire you to live with eternal purpose, finding joy, wisdom, and fullness in God. And before we finish, if this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs this word today. Leave your Amen in the comments, and may God bless your life deeply. See you in the next video.